Hello, students. Now let's start with the explanation of the poem Where the Mind is Without Fear. Now, students, as we move ahead into this poem, students, let me tell you that it is written by Rabindranath Tagore and is one of his vastly read and discussed poems. It was originally composed in Bengali and possibly in 1900 around and under the title Prarthana, meaning prayer. It appeared in the volume called Nabadya in 1901. Then later in 1911, Tagore himself translated the Bengali poem into English, and the translation appeared as poem number 35 in his novel winning anthology Gitanjali, which means song offerings. And students, it was published by the Indian Society of London in 1912. So, when the poem was written, students, India was under the British rule, and the people were eagerly waiting to get the freedom from their British rule. The poem is written in form of a prayer to God, the Almighty, for a true freedom for his country. And thus, Tagore or Rabindranath Tagore reveals his own concept of freedom throughout the poem where the mind is without fear. So, student, let's have this poem explanation line by line, students. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. Now, students, in the very first line, the poet prays to Almighty that his countrymen should be free from any fear of oppression or forced compulsion. He wishes that everyone in his country had has his head held high in dignity. In other words, according to him, in a truly free country, every person should be fearless and should have a sense of self dignity. Now, the next line says, where the knowledge is free. Students, in this second line, the poet dreams of a nation where knowledge would be free. Education should not be restricted to the upper class only, according to Rabindranath Tagore, but everybody should be allowed to acquire knowledge. Not only that, the children should learn freely from the nature and the world that is around them. They should not be forced to memorize some predetermined lessons. And this Tagore's typical concept of education, which he wanted to imbibe into the young generation, into the children of India, students. Now let's move into the third and the fourth line, students, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Now, student, in these lines, the poet emphasizes the unity of not only of his countrymen but also of the entire world. He thinks there should be no division among people based on their caste, creed, color, religion, or other baseless superstitions. In other words, prejudices and superstitions should not divide the people in groups and break their unity. Now let's read the next line, students, where the words come out from the depth of truth. Students, Tagore here wants to explain that he wants a nation where the people are truthful. They should not be superficial, and words should come out from the depth of their hearts, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection. This is the next line, students, of the poem. And here, the poet Rabindranath Tagore wants everyone to work hard to reach their goal and in the long run to reach perfection. He thinks that they should not be tired by working, people should not be lazy, and people should not be ignoring their work, students. Now, students, the next two lines says, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habits. Now, the students, the poet Rabindranath Tagore here compares reason or logical thinking to a clear stream, and in the next line, compares dead habits or superstitious beliefs to a dreary desert. He wants the stream of reason not to lose its way into the desert of prejudices. In short, people's thought should be monitored by rational thinking, not by superstition. Logic should overrule old baseless beliefs. Now, students, let's take the next line. Where the mind is led forward by thee into the ever widening thought and action. Students, in these lines, the poet wishes his countrymen to be progressive and broad minded. He wants that the minds are led forward to the ever widening thought and action by the Almighty. In short, we should be open minded and do something unusual or extraordinary, overcoming the narrowness of mind. The next line says, students, into the heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Now, student, in this final line of the poem, the poet addresses the God as Father, and he asks him to awaken his countrymen, to awaken his country into such a heaven of freedom where the above conditions meet. To make it clear, the poet prays to the Almighty, my Father, to raise or lift or awake his country, his countrymen, to such new heights where the freedom should be realized at its best, a heaven of freedom. In turn, he is actually praying that God awakens his countrymen so that they come out from the darkness of ignorance, prejudices, disunity, and all other evils that were present at that time in his time in country India. With this, we come to the end of this explanatory video of this particular poem, where the mind is without fear, students. Thank you for listening.